All right, we are going to do a brief coverage of research design. We've already talked a little bit about research methods, and research design is the way that you actually set up the research that you're going to do. In human development research, there are three types of designs that are common. And the reason for that is because in human development research, we're looking usually at change across time. And so we need research that allows us to assess change across time. The first one we're going to look at is called the cross-sectional design. And the cross-sectional design is just that. It's like you take a little cross-section of a variety of ages and you do whatever it is you're going to do to assess them. So in this case, you're taking several groups of different ages at one time. So let's say that I was interested in, mathematical reasoning. And so what I would do is I would take a group of 10-year-olds, for example, a group of 15-year-olds, and a group of 20-year-olds, all at the same time. So on the same day or within the same week or so, I would assess an entire group of 10-year-olds, an entire group of 15-year-olds, and an entire group of 20-year-olds to look at my research question about mathematical reasoning. I would maybe give them some kind of assessment of some kind. And then I would compare, how did the 10-year-olds do compared to the 15-year-olds, compared to the 20-year-olds? I would compare all these groups and their performance on that assessment. So that's a cross-sectional design. You're kind of doing it all about the same time, but you're looking at these different ages at the same time. Now, the advantage to this is that it's quick. You're doing it all around the same time period. The disadvantage is that these 10-year-olds are different than these 15-year-olds are different than these 20-year-olds. So even though you try to use larger groups to do this, you could have a problem because they're different people in the groups. You're not using the same people. The next one is a little bit different. So let me just go over this again. Cheap and quick, and the disadvantage is they're not the same people. The next one, the longitudinal design, one group is measured repeatedly over time. So you take the same people and you follow them across a period of time. So you have a group, I'm calling it group A here, and they're measured when they're 10, and then 5 years later they're measured again, and then 5 years later they're measured again. As you might imagine, this has some advantages, but it also has some disadvantages. And you can remember this, by the way, by thinking long time, longitudinal, long time. The advantages are that these are the same people, so you don't have to worry that there may be some differences between the group that are based on individual factors, but the disadvantages are that there's a lot of potential attrition, which is a fancy way of saying people don't come back. So they show up for the first round of study and then they don't finish it as the years go by. This is associated with low socioeconomic status. So if you're studying folks that are at a lower wealth level in society, they are less likely to show up for the period of years. Now you can think about why that might be. If you have less wealth, then you might be moving around more. The researchers might not be able to get in touch with you. You might have better things to do, like try to find some money so you could feed your family, try to get a job, work more. You're busier. They're unable to continue in the research as well as those with higher socioeconomic status. Of course, we are always interested in studying those with lower socioeconomic status because they're often the ones that need help. So this can be a problem. It's also expensive. It costs a lot of money to do this over a period of many years. Some of these big studies are 50 years long and they're very expensive. Also cohort and cohort effects. And so this is something you'll read a little bit about in your book as well. The cohort is a group of people that have something in common. And this term is used in common language. So for example, when I was hired at Ohlone, everyone that was hired in the same year as me that was faculty we were in the same cohort. They called us that year's cohort of new hires at Ohlone. But cohort just means you're a group of people that kind of have something in common for some reason. And one of the ways that you can have something in common is by when you were born and kind of where you were born. So this is really linked to historical period differences. So cohort really has to do with in this case, cohort effect has to do with experience differences based on historical period. The way that I was raised and my experience in life is very different perhaps than yours, unless we're in the same age cohort. If you're about my age and you grew up in California or in the United States, chances are good that we have some things in common. So longitudinal research can get stuck with cohort, meaning the people are in the group are the same, but the problem is as you test them over time, some of the things you find may be due to their experience in life in that historical period. And so they wouldn't necessarily apply then to someone who's born, say, 50 years later because of that influence of historical period. The third design that's not mentioned in your book, I think is worth mentioning here, is this is kind of the best design. It's called cross-sequential. And what they do is they combine both longitudinal and cross-sectional research. As you can imagine, this is very detailed and very expensive, takes a long period of time because you're essentially taking a cross-section and following those people over the years as well. So here's an example of part of it. So this one, look, you have many different groups, or what they're calling here cohorts, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, see? And they're measured when they're 20 years old, 25. So this group C is starting at 30. This group D is starting at 35, E at 40. And that is the cross-sectional portion of this design. Here, down at the bottom, I've put in the top part. And so you see here, this group or cohort A is measured at age 20, at age 25, and at age 30. So they're followed and measured every 5 years. So let's put these together. So that's the longitudinal part because it takes a long time going across many years. And here's if you put the two of them together. So this would be an example of a cross-sequential design. You have this cross-sectional part, and then you follow them across time. So each group is measured at multiple times, and they start at different ages. So what you're trying to do here is to eliminate problems with historical period by looking at that, and then eliminate problems with different groups by following them across time and so on. This is a really great design. It is rarely done because, again, it's very expensive. It takes a lot of time over often many years. I hope you found this helpful in terms of research designs, which are the way you set up your research as opposed to the research methods, which we discussed before. You pick your method and then you figure out how you're going to use it. Let me know if you have any questions.